Good morning and welcome to worship this morning at Middleton Community United Church of Christ, where we say that no matter who you are or where you are on your faith journey, you are welcome here. I'm the Reverend Zayna Thomley. My pronouns are she, hers, and I am so glad that you have chosen to worship with us this morning, whether you are joining us here in the sanctuary or from your home via our live stream. I am just glad that you have chosen to start your week here in this place with us and in the presence of God and God's community. If you're worshiping with us this morning, I'd invite you to let us know that you're worshiping with us. You can also use our digital friendship pad, whether you're here in person or at home, through this QR code. If you are worshiping online through our YouTube channel, there's also a link in the description of the video. You'll be able to let us know that you're worshiping with us and also have the opportunity to share any prayers that you might have for the community today. We are moving into another week. We're about halfway through our series on being curious and using curiosity as a practice of moving through a world that is often divided. For 3 weeks now, we've been asking how we can be curious about people who are different from us, people who challenge us, or problems that seem insurmountable in our lives. And today we move on to resilience, to talk about how we continue to be resilient in the face of a divided and angry and often hurtful world. And so our question as we center this morning is to think about someone or something that you easily make a quick judgment about, and invite God to give you a curious question about that person or topic. How can you move even just a little bit closer to curiosity?
Our sacred reading today is from Exodus 16, selected verses. The whole congregation of the Israelites complained against Moses and Aaron in the wilderness. The Israelites said to them, "If only we had died by the hand of the Lord in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the pots of meat and ate our fill of bread. For you have brought us into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Then Moses said to Aaron, "Say to the whole congregation of the Israelites, 'Draw near to the Lord, for he has heard your complaining.'" And as Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the Israelites, they looked toward the wilderness, and the glory of the Lord appeared in the cloud. The Lord spoke to Moses, "I have heard the complaining of the Israelites. Say to them, 'At twilight you shall eat meat, and in the morning you should have your fill of bread. Then you shall know that I am the Lord your God.'" In the evening, quails came up and covered the camp, and in the morning there was a layer of dew around the camp. When the layer of dew lifted, there on the surface of the wilderness was a fine, flaky substance, as fine as frost on the ground. When the Israelites saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they did not know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread that the Lord has given you to eat. This is what the Lord has commanded. Gather as much of it as each of you needs, an omer each per person according to the number of persons, all providing for those in their own tents." The Israelites did so, some gathering more, some less. This ends our reading of the ancient texts. May we be blessed with new understanding. We also have a special reading by Joy Harjo. Perhaps the world ends here. The world begins at a kitchen table. No matter what, we must eat to live. The gifts of the earth are brought and prepared, set on the table. So it has been since creation, and so it will go on. We chase chickens or dogs away from it. Babies teethe at the corners. They scrape their knees under it. It is here that children are given instructions on what it means to be human. We make men sit at it. We make women. At this table, we gossip, recall enemies and the ghosts of lovers. Our dreams drink coffee with us as they put their arms around our children. They laugh with us at our poor falling down selves, and as we put ourselves back together once again at the table. This table has been a house in the rain, an umbrella in the sun. Wars have begun and ended at this table. It is a place to hide in the shadow of terror, a place to celebrate the terrible victory. We have given birth on this table and have prepared our parents for burial here. At this table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite.
want to share a practice with you that I have had for several years, and I think I've talked about it before, but I want to explain to you a little bit more about this and where it came from. So in October of 2019, and dates in this first part are going to be important. In October of 2019, a really dear friend who I'd come to know really well in Platteville and her husband were moving away. They were moving to Minnesota, and we were preparing to figure out what our friendship looked like with distance between us. And as she was preparing to move, she invited me into a practice of weekly gratitudes. So she invited me to weekly that we would send each other an email sharing the things that we were grateful for that particular week. So I was thinking about this practice, and I went back to very old emails, and I searched for the first ones that we sent to each other. Oh, I'm going to turn it on. There we go. So this is the very first gratitude email that I sent to my friend Hannah. And you probably, unless you're sitting very close, you can't read any of this. But it was sent on October 7th of 2019. And I said, wonderful, which was a response to something she had said in her gratitude email. And we always frame these emails in 4 prompts. Today, I am grateful for dear friends. It is so good to be with Emily and Tasha in Evanston and Chicago today, and to begin this practice with you. The second thing we say is something that we feel good about. So I feel good about the work that I got done from a coffee shop this morning. I've planned worship for the next 4 weeks, and we'll be doing a series on stewardship and gratitude that I'm kind of excited about. And if you've ever been in a stewardship meeting with me, you know that I was not lying there. I really like stewardship season. I enjoyed a beautiful walk. So the next thing is something that we enjoyed. I enjoyed a beautiful walk along the Evanston shoreline in my old neighborhood. It was a beautiful day with a healthy dose of nostalgia. And then finally, something we're looking forward to. So I'm looking forward to, of course, seeing Ira Wolf tonight and a delicious meal at Uncommon Ground. So I wrote this email from Chicago where I was staying with a friend and we were going to a concert that night. And Ira Wolf is a folk singer who we were going to see at Uncommon Ground, actually, which was a restaurant that we loved and venue. So this practice started then, and it goes on today. I wrote one of these emails this last week. 5 years later, we continue. Most weeks, there have been seasons where things have fallen apart, or one or the other of us has had a baby, or moved homes, that the emails haven't happened. But we continue to come back to this practice of sharing in gratitude week after week after week. So if you can do the math, we started this practice in October of 2019. In December of 2019, my sister went through her own personal crisis and moved into my basement with 4 teenagers. They were still there in March of 2020 when I went through my first round of IVF, and then a global pandemic hit us, right? And you all can imagine that my year, the rest of that year, went much like the rest of your years went, except I had 4 teenagers living in my basement that was not built for 4 teenagers. So this practice during that year became one of returning again and again and again to a position of gratitude, of looking at what was a very hard year and asking myself to see what it was that I was grateful for in that moment. In our scripture today, we hear just a clip of the familiar story of the people of Israel leaving Egypt and wandering into the desert. So for a little context of what has happened before this scene, Moses and the people of Israel, so the people of Israel had been enslaved in Egypt for 400 years, right? For 400 years, they worked at the will of the Pharaoh. They died at the will of the Pharaoh. They suffered, they ate at the will of the Pharaoh. And for 400 years, they cried out to God to be rescued. And so we get this story of Exodus, when God responds to the call of God's people and comes to their rescue. Now, up until this point, it has been very clear in this part of the story that God is present and working for the freedom of the Israelites. So it begins with Moses and a burning bush, right? The presence of God and the voice of God, very clear in this moment. And then it continues. Moses goes to the Pharaoh and says, "Let my people go." And over again, God is showing up in plagues, in shows of might and power against those who enslave God's people. And then when they finally get to go, they escape through the parting of the sea. And then pillars of fire and smoke. And they get to the other side, and they find themselves in the wilderness. And then, in the wilderness, almost immediately, they forget all of those miraculous things that just happened, and they start complaining. Now, I don't want to speak poorly of the community here, because they had every right to complain. So we're told at the beginning of the text that it has been almost exactly a month since the Israelites left Egypt. And about a month is how long it took them to get through all of the food that they brought with them, through everything that they had stockpiled and carried on their backs. And you need food. You need food to eat. So the people go to Moses and they complain to God, and they are so dire that they say they would rather be back in Egypt. Because though they were enslaved, at least there was food at the end of the day. So in this moment, the people are saying to God, "We choose enslavement and food over dying of starvation in the desert." Seems reasonable, right? So God responds. And God responds with the gift, we're told, of manna and quail. God responds by saying, "Every day I am going to give you what you need to survive in the wilderness. Every day you will have enough bread to eat, you will have enough quail to eat, you will have fresh water." And day after day after day, these things happen. When God tells Moses that this is the plan, God says, "I'm going to test my people." Now, that's always kind of a line that maybe grates against us a little bit, right? Does God put us through tests? Does God test our faith in that way? And I want to ask us to reframe that a little bit, right? Because tests aren't meant to just catch you, right? Tests are meant to do what? They're meant to measure our progress in learning something. Tests are meant to measure the progress in which we're learning something. And so God, in this scene, is teaching the people of Israel how to live in a different way than they did when they were in Egypt. Because the way they lived in Egypt was familiar, and they knew they would get food, and they knew if they worked hard enough that they wouldn't be done away with. But God is teaching them to live in a new way, to say, "I need you to rely on me as we move into this promised land. I need you to know that you're going to have enough to eat." So it takes them years to learn this lesson, and they learn it through this gift of manna. Now, in the text, you heard them say that they looked at the white flaky stuff on the ground, and they said, "What is it?" This is the word in Hebrew that becomes manna, right? Manna literally means like, huh? Like, what's that over there? And I really like this. I think it is a really brilliant connection to our theme of generosity these weeks. Or not generosity, we're not there yet. In our theme of curiosity these weeks, right? That the Israelites name this food after the curiosity they have in finding it. That this question of what is it? And every day they have to go out and find this stuff. And every day they have to ask themselves, what is it that God is doing? What is it that God is providing? What is it that is giving us hope for another day in the wilderness? And it takes 40 years of looking for the what is it? 40 years of seeking out God's provision in the world that only shows up one day at a time. And we're told they don't learn this lesson overnight, right? So the first day that this shows up and the people are instructed, just take one day's portion at a time, and there'll be more tomorrow. Of course, people who are used to living in Egypt, where what tomorrow brings isn't always sure, starts hoarding some. Does anybody remember what happens? We didn't read this part this morning. What happens when they keep more than they're supposed to have? It spoils, right? There's worms. They wake up to worms in the bread. There's a song there. I don't know, nobody knows that song. It's funny. So the bread spoils, and they have to be taught the lesson again, over and over and over again. They're called back to this question of what is it that God is doing today to provide for our needs. This is a lesson in resiliency. This is a lesson of waking up day after day after day and trusting that you're going to have what you need to take the next step, to do the next thing. When we talk about resiliency, environmental scientists talk about the resiliency of ecosystems, right? Resiliency is the ability for an ecosystem to repair itself after a catastrophic event. So an example of this would be a wildfire that destroys a forest. That ecosystem then uses the ash of the wildfire to feed the soil that grows new trees, and that moss grows over the hills of decay that is left behind, right? Resiliency in an ecosystem is the ability to come back from being damaged, to come back from destruction, to get back up. And this is a theme that is carried throughout the work of Joy Harjo. We heard one of her poems today. Joy is a Native American poet, an American poet laureate for several years in the United States. And her poem today about the kitchen table, I really appreciated the way it ended. At the table, we sing with joy, with sorrow. We pray of suffering and remorse. We give thanks. Perhaps the world will end at the kitchen table while we are laughing and crying, eating of the last sweet bite. She writes and talks about the resiliency of natives in the United States, right? A people who have been devastated by the colonialism of the past and the practices and the institutions of the present, but that still exist and thrive and offer and gather around tables, that still find ways to come to tables and to give thanks. And as I read that poem, I was reminded of what it is that gives us resilience in our faith. And here in church, we have practice of coming around table, whether that is at the communion table where we meet the risen Christ again and again and again, or at the table of fellowship where we learn again and again and again that we do not go through this world on our own. That it is returning to these places where we learn that same lesson that the Israelites were learning so long ago, that God's provision is endless, and that there is more than enough for those who seek it. Walter Brueggemann, a theologian and writer, talks about the Israelites and us today having to learn the hard lesson of letting go of the myth of scarcity to take up the lyric of abundance. And I really like that language. That the people of Israel, when they were living under the Pharaoh, lived in a world that held at its center a sense of scarcity. That those in power enslaved those without power because they did not believe that there was enough to go around. And so they hoarded what they had at the expense of others. And what this 40-year lesson was meant to teach the people of Israel, what it was meant to teach God's people, and what it's meant to teach us today, is that we live in a world of abundance, and that our God sings a lyric of abundance, and that there is more than enough if we choose not to hoard it. God's provision is always there again and again and again. There is always something to find if we look for it. So I'm reminded of these gratitude emails that I send each week, and that is what they are. They're manna emails. In the wilderness of a pandemic, or of becoming a new parent, or taking a new call. In the midst of all of that, the thing that keeps me resilient, that keeps me faithful, is reminding myself and practicing over and over again that practice of gratitude, of looking out in the world and saying, huh, as I look for God, of saying, what is it? What is it that God is doing in my life? What is it that God is providing in this world? And what is it that gives me hope? We have to keep these reminders in front of us as we go about this hard work of curiosity, because the world we live in is so often oriented around that myth of scarcity. And we can only choose the way of curiosity when we are practicing the lyric of abundance, as Brueggemann says. When we are turning to the way of abundance over and over and over again. And we say practice because it takes practice. It takes every day waking up and asking, what is it that God is doing here? Where is the manna that God has left me in this situation, in this landscape, that is going to help me survive to the next day, that's going to help me to live in God's way for another week or another month? Friends, I am grateful for the manna that we find in this place, for the many ways that we ask together, what is it that God is doing here and in this world? Amen. Throughout the year, our congregation and congregations throughout the United Church of Christ participate in 4 special offerings of the congregation. And one of those in most churches was celebrated last week. And if you were here last week, we had a lot happening. So we are celebrating this week and inviting you to contribute to the Neighbors in Need special offering through the United Church of Christ. You have envelopes in your bulletins, and we're going to see a short video right now talking a little bit about where this offering goes in the wider church.
Hello friends, Bentley DeBartoleben Phillips connecting with you today. I'm the Transitional Executive in the Love of Church Unit and Team Leader for Education for Faithful Action. I'm here to share with you today what's new inside this year's Neighbors in Need campaign promotion. But before I get to that, I'd like to remind you that the gifts to this offering support the United Church of Christ's ministries of justice and compassion throughout the United States. In fact, 1/3 of the Neighbors in Need funds support the Council for American Indian Ministries. The other 2/3 of the offering support a variety of justice initiatives, advocacy efforts, direct service projects, as well as grants. Speaking of grants, how many of you know that they are annually awarded to UCC churches and organizations doing justice work in their communities? These grants, amounting from $1,000 to $10,000, fund projects whose work range from direct service to community organizing and advocacy to address systemic injustice.
When we give to our neighbors in need and all of our special offerings of the United Church of Christ, it is a chance for us as a congregation in the UCC that is thriving and growing and living into God's abundance to share what it is that we have here with churches who don't have as much, but who are doing just as vital work in their communities. So I invite you to give generously to the UCC special offering Neighbors in Need. You can do that again through the envelopes in your bulletins or through this QR code that will take you to a giving page. As we move into other announcements of things that are happening around here at MCC, a reminder that after worship today, our Faith Matters group meets down in the gathering room. This is our conversation group that dives deeper into topics, and right now they are moving through 7 prayers with 7 scriptures, a practice of dwelling in the Word in preparation for, in the midst of this election cycle. And later this afternoon, Moses will be hosting their regular general meeting here at MCC, and we are all invited to attend and to learn more and to check in with the work that is happening through Moses, which stands for Madison Organizing Strength, Equity, and Solidarity for the criminal legal system reform. They do really amazing work, and we are newer partners in Moses, and this is our first chance to host the meeting. So we hope that you will come and experience that today at 2:30 in Fellowship Hall. There is a meeting later this week for families with youth interested in our summer service trip. We will be taking a trip to St. Louis to work with Urban Mission Inn from July 20th through the 26th. This is open to current 8th through 12th graders, and I'd highly recommend, if you are at all interested, to come to that meeting via Zoom. You can find more information through this QR code or in the youth news that has gone out the last couple of weeks. And finally, we have left time for an update from our generosity campaign, from our generosity team. And I'm going to begin. We are highlighting some of the things over the next few weeks that we do with the monies that are given to MCC, beginning with surprising gifts. And I'm going to invite Christy Bowen to come up. She nominated an organization to receive a surprising gift this year. Surprising gifts happen twice a year, and our Board of Mission and Stewardship invites people to nominate organizations that they feel really passionately about, and then we send them just a random check mid-year, which if you've worked in a nonprofit or in an organization like that, you know what a gift that can be. It's also a great opportunity for us to learn about what the congregation really cares about. So Christy nominated an organization this year, and they were a recipient, and she's going to share a little bit about their work in the world.
Open Doors for Refugees is a volunteer-driven organization whose mission is to help refugees make a home in the Madison area. With the support of the Madison community, Open Doors collects furnishings and sets up apartments and provides translation, transportation, ESL, childcare, and employment services for arriving refugees. So here's why I nominated Open Doors for Refugees for a surprise gift from MCC. Last year, I stood up here before you and spoke of another organization I had nominated that had helped Gene, a man that my husband met in Haiti several years ago. And then just about 2 years ago, Gene asked my husband if he would sponsor him to come to the United States. And so for the past 18 months, Gene has been living with us and doing quite well adjusting to life in the States. Gene had family members that also wanted to leave Haiti and come to the United States. And this last February, his brother, his sister, and her husband came to Madison. Gene was able to find them an apartment close to a bus line and close to possible job opportunities, but he needed help getting their apartment furnished. My daughter and several of Gene's friends stepped up to help find furnishings. Various individuals and churches were amazing with how much furniture they donated. They soon had everything they needed except for kitchen supplies, such as dishes, small appliances, and utensils. My daughter contacted Open Doors, and they not only provided all the needed kitchen supplies, but they even dropped them off at my daughter's house. The executive director was also very helpful in offering other suggestions of agencies that could help them in other ways. Gene's family is getting settled in quite nicely. Since they arrived, his sister has had a beautiful baby girl, and both his brother and brother-in-law have gotten jobs at a hotel. Open Doors for Refugees played a crucial part in helping them to get settled.
Thank you, Christy, for that heartwarming example of what we can do together. Every year, our Board of Mission and Stewardship is able to generously designate tens of thousands of dollars to organizations that our congregation feels passionately about, like the one that Christy just told us about. When you commit to financially supporting Middleton Community UCC, you can be sure that your dollars are reaching far out into our community, creating a more just and generous world for all of God's people. If you haven't yet, please go to middletonucc.org/stewardship-campaign to make your 2025 pledge or become a sustaining giver today. Please make sure you check our chart in Fellowship Hall. Thank you to everyone who has already made your intention to give known next year. We've already reached, I think, about 30%. Was on a slide that 30% of our goal, and are incredibly grateful for that. We hope to have responses from all of our members before we celebrate Generosity Sunday, which is coming up November 17th. Once again, thank you, Christy, and thank you all for prayerfully considering your gifts of abundance.
To support MCC and the work that happens here and out in the world, you can give offerings today at our website, middletonucc.org, by finding the yellow Give button, or as you leave the sanctuary today. And if you have a special offering envelope, this will go in the same place. There are wooden boxes just outside the door, and you turn around, they're on the walls there, and you can leave your offering there. Friends, let us stand and join in singing our closing song together, Ever. We've heard this song in worship before. Ellie has sang it on her own, but we're going to join her today in singing a new song, and you can see the music in your bulletins and the words on the screen.
Hope ever, faith ever, strengthening you. Life ever, breath ever, nourishing you. And everywhere you go, may you always be home. And everyone you meet be messengers of peace. Let your light shine through, and your heart ever be true. Move in grace and gratitude, and walk in wisdom, sharing all that's good. Peace ever, joy ever, following you. Light ever, love ever, radiating through. And everywhere you go, may you always be home. And everyone you meet be messengers of peace. Let your dreams courageously. May we
My friends, as we go from this place, I hope that you go with curiosity, that you go asking questions of one another, of yourself, and of this world. I hope that you go asking, what is it that God is doing in your life on this day, on this hill that you climb? As you go from this place, may God bless you and keep you. May God's face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And may God look upon you with kindness and give you peace today and every day. Amen.